On the 20th of November, the 2022 World Cup will begin in the Gulf state of Qatar. It's football's biggest international tournament and held just once every 4 years. It draws thousands of fans to the host nation while millions of viewers tune in from around the world. In short, there's a huge amount of money riding on a successful World Cup. And no one knows this better than the game's governing body, FIFA, which is why they've now written to the national teams taking part and told them to keep out of politics. This letter is written by FIFA's President and Secretary General and says this. FIFA would like to assure you that in Qatar, everything has been prepared to ensure that every participating nation will have the very best chance of achieving success on football's ultimate stage. The 8 state-of-the-art stadiums where 64 matches of the FIFA World Cup Qatar 2022 trademark sign will be played will provide the perfect platform for the world's greatest sporting event. So please, let's now focus on the football. We know football does not live in a vacuum, and we are equally aware that there are many challenges and difficulties of a political nature all around the world. But please do not allow football to be dragged into every ideological or political battle that exists. So what are these political battles that FIFA wants footballers to keep themselves out of? When Qatar won the right to hold the World Cup in 2010, it had only one stadium, the Khalifa Stadium, which was opened in 1976. But between 2010 and now, it built 7 more at a cost of an estimated $200 billion. It managed this by importing huge numbers of migrant workers from countries in Africa and Asia to work in construction and hospitality. There are now some 2 million migrant workers living in Qatar. But migrant workers in the Middle Eastern nation don't enjoy many fundamental protections. They're often bound to their employers under the kafala system, meaning that until 2020, a worker needed the permission of their employer to change jobs or even leave the country. A situation that Amnesty International described as, and I quote, sometimes amounting to forced labour. Their living conditions have also been described as unsanitary and inadequate, and many were not paid the salaries they were promised. This is a video from a France 24 story. The worker's identity is protected because in Qatar, it's illegal to broadcast images critical of the country.
This is the life we are living here in Qatar, Doha. This place is very dirty smelling. The life we are living here is hell. I don't want anyone to know that I'm doing this.
This is our accommodation. See? So come inside. Some people sleep down here. In the night, some people sleep down here. Someone do like this. Why like this? The company say will provide us bed. The company will provide us food. And this is how we cook our food here. We're just trying to survive here. This is what we buy now. We don't have any place to go and get some food, you see? This is what we eat. The thing, what is happening to us, we are tired now. We are really tired. That's all I can say.
Every day they promise us to give us the salary and not yet giving the salary.
Yeah, it's about a year now, not only me, but all my friends. We try to talk to the company say will take us to police. Some of us want to go back to their countries. Some of us want to change companies. The company has taken all our passports. What should we do here? This is slavery, this is kind of prison. This is you abusing human rights. This is not fair. This kind of life is not fair.
But it doesn't end with inhumane conditions and modern-day slavery, because thousands of those workers have died since Qatar was awarded the World Cup. In 2021, The Guardian reported that 6,750 migrant workers from just 5 Asian nations had died since 2010. Most of them were young and fit men, and many worked outside for 12 or 13 hours a day in temperatures reaching up to 45 degrees centigrade. Those figures are just from 5 countries, so the true figures are much higher, though we'll probably never know because Qatar has a habit of failing to investigate the causes of migrant deaths. The Guardian reports that 69% of those 6,751 recorded deaths were attributed to natural causes or cardiac arrest, and contained no information about the underlying causes of death. A recent Amnesty International report adds this. Bangladeshi government records attributed 71% of the deaths of Bangladeshi nationals in Qatar from November 2016 to October 2020 to natural causes, and a 2020 report by Nepal's Ministry of Labour, Employment and Social Security found that 55% of Nepali deaths in Qatar between 2008 and 2019 were either from cardiac arrest or natural causes. Taken together, such figures show that thousands of deaths have gone effectively unexplained over the last decade without any meaningful cause of death reported. Qatar is the 4th richest country in the world by GDP per head, and yet the families of those who died since 2010 regularly receive no compensation. And it's not only migrant workers that Qatar treats as though they're less than human. The country hates LGBT people too. According to Human Rights Watch, Qatar punishes consensual sexual relations between men above 16 with up to 7 years imprisonment. It also provides penalties between 1 and 3 years for any male who instigates or entices another male to commit an act of sodomy or immorality. Those are the legal punishments for being gay, but there are some extra-legal ones too. The I newspaper interviewed Ali, a migrant worker who had come to Qatar from the Philippines. And just a heads up, this next part contains a description of rape. It was early 2018 when a man messaged him on a gay dating app. Then I received a call telling me he is interested to meet me, says Ali. The man was Turkish, which seemed reassuring to Ali as he was probably just another foreign worker like him. He then offered Ali QR 300, roughly £70. But the condition was I had to go to his hotel and he would bring a dress and makeup for me to wear, he says. I decided to go. Ali had never accepted money before, but this was an opportunity to top up his salary, much of which was already being sent home. When I saw the hotel, I entered inside. It was the 10th floor. He walked straight ahead down the corridor, and on the left was the room. I opened the door and I went inside. There are 6 people, he says, in the present tense, as if reliving the scene. There are 6 people. His voice cuts off. After a few seconds, another voice comes on the line. It's Ali's best friend who is here to support him during the interview. Can I talk? He is crying. While Ali tries to compose himself in the background, his friend, whom we'll call Datu, takes over. The 6 other men were, he says, Qatari police. They captured him, says Datu. Ali starts to speak again. I really wanted to jump out the window, but I can't. It's too high and I'm already cornered inside the room, he says. They catched me and threw me on the bed. They started to rape me. When one officer was done, he says, another took over. All of them except the Turkish man. He watched until they finished. He was laughing at me. Ali was taken from that crime scene to a migration processing center, and 2 days later he was deported to the Philippines. These are the so-called political issues that FIFA doesn't want footballers talking about, what the rest of us might call the right to be treated like a human being.
I sort of had a deja vu, all of these discussions about sort of Qatar human rights abuses and what it means for the World Cup. Because in 2018, we had exactly the same conversations about Russia. Now, they had, fairly recently at the time, annexed Crimea. It would have been 4 years, but it's recent in terms of annexations. Obviously, Crimea is still very much a contested region. Also, they'd had a contested election, very bad rights when it comes to LGBT people. Now, there were lots of discussions about should people boycott the Russian World Cup, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there's a certain momentum. Once the football starts, everyone forgets about this. And I've got some quotes from various people at the close of the Russia World Cup. This is Steve Rosenberg. So he's now BBC Russia editor. And so he said at the close of the World Cup, the stunning new stadiums, free train travel to venues, and the absence of crowd violence has impressed visiting supporters. Russia has come across as friendly and hospitable, a stark contrast with the country's authoritarian image. All the foreign fans I have spoken to are pleasantly surprised. The FIFA president said this: everyone discovered a beautiful country, a welcoming country that is keen to show the world that everything has been said before might not be true. A lot of preconceived ideas have been changed because people have seen the true nature of Russia. And then the New York Times said, sometime around France's virtuoso victory against Argentina and Belgium's breathtaking comeback against Japan, the planet seemed to come to a decision. Russia 2018, it was universally decided, had not just been a good World Cup and not just a great World Cup, it had, in fact, been the best World Cup. Now, the idea that what people saw when they went to the World Cup in Russia was the true Russia now seems like a bit of a joke. But you have a news cycle where before the World Cup, there's not that much to write about because there's no sport to talk about. There's no one watching it. So the newspapers talk about human rights abuses. The moment the World Cup starts, people start talking about the football. And, your reading audience, your reading publics don't actually want to be brought down by talking about the human rights abuses in the country where the tournament is being held because they've got football fever at that point in time. No, all completely understandable. People have said, has it backfired Qatar having this because it's sort of shone a light on human rights abuses in Qatar in a way that otherwise, wouldn't have happened? Obviously, do they want all of these news stories about the terrible human rights in Qatar, which, are motivated principally by the fact that the World Cup is there? Potentially not. But I think they're gambling that once the World Cup starts, all of that is going to be ancient history, which, as those quotes show, was kind of the case in Russia. That gamble paid off for Putin. And obviously you can say, obviously sports washing is only going to get you so far. If you're then going to invade your neighbor, you're going to still be considered a bit of a rogue state. But it seems like in the short term for Russia, the soft power they got from hosting that World Cup was reasonable. And I wouldn't be surprised if Qatar pulls the same thing off.
I've got to say that I really agree with you. And I wonder if the Qatari strategy will be, ease up on the religious policing over the period of the World Cup. Don't be too nasty to LGBT traveling supporters. But then what the room of soft power gives you afterwards is that people are going to be, less likely to crack down hard or divest or, pour an international condemnation afterwards. They'll be left with a relatively positive image of your country. And then also when you think about the kind of jockeying for position amongst Gulf states and also the kind of, please don't invade me noises being made by Qatar towards UAE and Saudi Arabia, you kind of get the sense that they sort of see this World Cup as enveloping them in a kind of protective cloak of soft power. And also the last thing that I'll say on this is I think that Formula One offers a really good example of what happens when you try to have both sports washing and also room for rich and famous athletes to sort of express their condemnation or solidarity with marginalized groups. It means absolutely nothing to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia that Lewis Hamilton will race with a rainbow decal on his helmet or on his car. It means absolutely nothing to them that Sebastian Vettel is critical of climate policies. You've done the work by hosting Grand Prix there and by bringing in all that money and bringing in all that wealth and bringing in all that investment and normalization of conditions in Saudi Arabia. It kind of doesn't matter what performative gesture is being made by athletes who feel their consciences being prickled. And I'm not saying that as shade against Lewis Hamilton. I'm Team Lewis all the way, but I think that shows just how easily those symbols of dissent can be co-opted.